the beginning.
So this is an emergency, and we are already in trouble. We are already fighting something that is very, very large. It is going to get a lot larger if we do not get a lot more resource.
Nothing.
Ebola spares no one. A doctor recently caught the disease after treating infected patients. 3 nurses have died. There are only 2 ways to combat the epidemic: prevention and disinfection. Ebola frequently spreads when people die and at their funerals, when large numbers of people come into contact with the body. The body should be sealed in a double bag and isolated as quickly as possible, says the WHO. People also need to be educated. There was an interesting lesson on that from Guinea.
You have to act as soon as possible. You cannot touch someone who has the disease or who is vomiting blood. Nor can you touch a dead person. You cannot touch the body. It is not just here, but also in the other villages. And I think the Red Cross has done a good job of making people aware. It is clear that people are also afraid because some of their relatives have gone for treatment and never returned. These are the elements that create fear and create a lot of concern about Ebola and make villagers very hesitant.
The disease is spread through bodily fluids like saliva or sperm. Since March, some 900 people have been infected and 600 have died in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. Despite a special summit and some important initiatives, Ebola remains a threat in West Africa.
An Algerian passenger airliner with 119 passengers and crew on board has crashed. Ground control lost contact with the plane that was traveling from Burkina Faso to Algeria 50 minutes after takeoff. Details in this CFI report.
Breaking news on Algerian television about an Air Algérie passenger plane that went missing early this morning. This was before it was confirmed that the plane had crashed. The aircraft took off from Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso at 1:17 GMT for Algiers, with 119 people on board, including 7 crew members. But 50 minutes later, while the plane was flying over Mali, all contact was lost.
The last radar contact was at 1:55 GMT, while the plane was flying over the region of Gao.
It was a McDonnell Douglas 8-3, similar to this one, an aircraft chartered by Air Algérie from another airline, Swift Air of Spain. What exactly happened? All day, people tried to obtain information from the Algerian Airlines offices in Ouagadougou, but there were more hypotheses than actual facts. One of them, the airplane could have been rerouted by air controllers because of bad weather conditions. The crash was finally confirmed at the end of the day. An Algerian official made the announcement. On board the flight AH5017 were passengers from Burkina Faso as well as many other nationalities, including some 50 French nationals.
Despite the shuttle diplomacy by U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the war between Hamas and Israel is still raging. Hamas leader Khalid Mashal says that there will be no left on fighting if Israel does not lift the blockade it imposed on Gaza in 2006. Civilians, especially women and children, continue to bear the brunt of Israel's ferocious bombardment. More in this report.
It was another day of war in Gaza. Early this morning, residents of the overpopulated strip, bombed by Israel for 16 days now, were counting their dead. More than 700 people have been killed, 89 in the past 24 hours, including a number of children. Hamas rockets continue to fall on Israel. A mosque and buildings around it were hit in this district of Jabalia refugee camp. Israel says it was a command center for the Hamas in the midst of civilians. Local residents do not understand.
Most of the injured are children. There are no resistance fighters in this district. I think that the occupiers have lost their heads. They're taking out their anger on civilians. They don't know what they're doing.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was in Cairo trying to arrange a truce for Gaza. But the political boss of Hamas in Qatar was laying down conditions. No halt to the fighting, he said, if Israel does not lift the blockade imposed on Gaza in 2006.
When you look at the results of this battle between us and Israel, you see that they are the butchers, the aggressors, the settlers, and we are the real owners of the land.
For Israel also, the figures are ugly. 32 soldiers and 3 civilians have been killed since the beginning of Operation Protective Edge. These are the heaviest losses since the war against the Hezbollah in Lebanon in 2006. On Wednesday, outgoing Israeli President Shimon Peres paid a visit to the family of a soldier killed in the fighting. The man who symbolized dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians for years has stepped down as president. International criticism of Israel is mounting. In Geneva, the Human Rights Council of the United Nations has decided to organize a mission to investigate possible war crimes committed by Israel. The council also criticized the rocket attacks by Hamas on civilian zones there.
You're watching Grts News. We now take a second break. Welcome back. Before we take leave of you, a recap of the day's main stories. The Green Youth have pledged to play their rightful role in nationwide efforts geared towards ensuring that enough rice is grown in the country to feed the masses. The United Nations has praised the Gambia's effort at developing a comprehensive social protection policy which takes into account the needs of vulnerable communities. An Algerian passenger airliner traveling from Burkina Faso to Algeria has crashed shortly after takeoff, killing over 100 passengers and crew. And the United Nations Human Rights Council has announced plans to investigate possible war crimes allegedly committed by Israel during Operation Protective Edge. That was all in this edition of the news. Thanks for the pleasure of your company. Do stay with us. I'm Sylvia George. Good afternoon.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار على نهج إلى يوم الدين بعد جبر لا لامر لا البداية ودام بافلا لك بجي RTS جان على تفسير القرآن بنداتو السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته ninga taral benfe ngalonu wati tambila suratu baraa atafanamu madina sorolu do kilinati mi yalon ko sora jangol lemu atalamu alqur'ano kono sora konon tan janguti to awal wa fala chapter 9 atalamu sora konon tan janguti alqur'ano kono nyin soro aya keme aya mon anin konon to soto soro nyin ala follow lato nali akorosi bismillahir rahmanir rahim tiji telum sora kilimuti alquran kono mimman bismillahir rahmanir rahim soto a follow lato amantara tema amantara labuntu munne yatinna ala la yalo bar lonnal kamin foje wala mu soro min be akoma jannata kana suratul anfal amuntabe diyam kan jihado kunyal la kala nafulo min kasoto jihado kono ni natana ni suratu baraa afana mbedi yamla nin kafirolu fulan kaf molu nafikolu amunta ko nin bemu ku kilo kadi yamu ni wala so man sulo soto pour ka fatam fansi soto nyim fulolu tema ni boda nyindo kono doro yese nyindo kono hanna